Hey, how's it going? Jeff here, and I want to talk today about how sometimes you got to break up to make up. Recently, over the last few months, I've been having kind of a tumultuous time. You see all these videos online, and we talk about our successes, and we celebrate things that we've done right or that have gone our way, and because ideally when things go well, we want to learn from that so we can duplicate it and we can share it. But I think sometimes there's a value in saying, okay, let me not only tell you a story about how I struggled 10 years ago and here's how I overcame it, but let me tell you a story about how I struggled 10 minutes ago and how I'm trying to work through it, right? I think that's the commonality that we all share. And as some things have gone well for me, by no means does it mean that I have left behind the concept of struggle. And over the last few months, I have really found myself struggling, in particular with one key business relationship in my life. And it's been really frustrating because I had about a 2-year run there where business-wise, everything was just rolling smooth. I kind of had like Midas touch for about 2 years. Everything was just cranking. And then in the last few months, it really goes back into last year, I've had some real hardship and frustration. And about 2 months ago, I said, you know what? I'm forcing this. I'm pushing too hard. I'm way out of balance with the law of reversed effort, which, if you're familiar with that, or if you're not familiar with that, it's basically a principle developed by a philosopher named Alan Watts. He was a British philosopher from the last 100 years or so. It's kind of common sense, like basically that both at a subconscious level, at a sort of universal energy level, even at a cognitive conscious level, that the harder you try to force something, a lot of times the less successful you are. It's like trying too hard to remember something when you go to the grocery store and you forget what you were there for, and you're trying so hard to remember, and it's like you can't remember, but as soon as you relax and say, oh, whatever, and do something else, it like pops into your brain, right? It's the law of reversed effort. The best metaphor for this is that if you're trying to clear muddy water, the best thing to do is leave it alone and let it settle, right? That's the analogy I always come back to in my mind for the law of reversed effort. But I've been way out of balance with it for the last few months. And so finally, about a month ago, I said, you know what? I don't like who I'm becoming in this relationship. I don't like what this is doing to me. So I'm going to give myself permission to just be done. And whether that means I'm done for good or I'm done for now, I don't even need to decide that. One of the things that I think we run into in doing what we need to do to take care of ourselves and to ultimately be more productive and more successful in our various endeavors, whether it's personal relationships, business ventures, even at our jobs sometimes, even relationships with our children or our parents. Like, one of the mistakes we make is we forget that there's a pause button. Like, and because we have this ego that's like, well, I'm not a quitter. I'm not going to be someone who quits. We're scared sometimes to push pause. But pausing isn't quitting. Pausing is creating additional possibilities. It's not removing possibilities. And not to get too academic, but if you've ever studied the work of Martin Seligman, the creator of positive psychology, which is really powerful and instructive for kind of how to I think be better at life. He talks about the 3 P's of pessimism. And they're errors in the way that we perceive the world. And they're errors of permanence, errors of pervasiveness, and errors of personalization, which are permanence is about time, pervasiveness is about size, personalization is about responsibility. And that these cognitive errors, that sometimes we failing to see that there's a difference between pausing and quitting is an error of permanence. We're falsely attributing the idea that any choice we make right now becomes a permanent choice. You can pause something without stopping it and without quitting it. And according to the law of reversed effort, and according to probably a lot of shared experience that we all have, but that we somehow resist the lesson of because of fear, or because of fear of how other people will react, a lot of times we're scared to just push pause. But I can tell you, and I've here I am, I've relearned the lesson, I've reaffirmed the lesson, that a lot of times when you just push pause and you just step away from the thing, what happens is creativity and the original spark that powered you for the idea or the concept in the first place can regrow, because nothing can grow when it is under extreme pressure. And the best example of this I can think of is, let's say you're at the gym. I go to the gym a lot. I like working out. Let's say somebody says, okay, Jeff, I want you to go, put that weight on your back and I want you to squat it. And it's, heavy, for me, heavy, like anything, in the threes, 350 pounds, let's say. Okay, Jeff, go squat that weight. All right. Well, I can do it. Put the weight on, I go down. Now, if I'm at the bottom of my rep and somebody says, okay, Jeff, while you're down there forcing this weight up, literally for dear life, I want you to go ahead and solve a problem. Okay, let me run this by you. I'm going to give you a scenario and I want you to come up with a creative solution. I'm like, no, shut up. Let me get this weight off my back and then I can think, right? And yet so many of us find ourselves in a situation where the energy and the dynamic of the situation, and this can be a relationship. Again, I see this a lot in relationships. I've seen this in my own relationships. I see it a lot in my friends' relationships, where the dynamic is one that is so intense and so high pressure, and there's so much force at all times, that yet we wonder why we're not being creative and why we're not being fluid and why solutions aren't naturally presenting themselves and things aren't getting better. Sometimes you just gotta rack the weight. You just gotta pause and then give yourself permission to say, it's the whole concept, if you love someone, set them free. If they come back, they're yours forever. That's true of anything. Allow yourself the possibility of freedom from a thing, and very often you will return to the thing physically, mentally, emotionally, for all the right reasons, not just because of the inertia that it's already there, or the fear of, what if I let it go? And so I'm happy to report that as of this, in the last month of kind of giving myself permission to possibly step away from a thing, immediately there was this renewed creativity and intelligence and camaraderie with the other people involved, where it's just like the couple. It's like, oh yeah, we're on break, and then 2 weeks later you go, oh, we're talking again, and then 2 weeks after that they move back in together, right? And now things are firing on all cylinders. We're frankly probably doing better than we ever were. And it's been a nice reaffirmation that I thought, there's probably a lot of value in that for a lot of other people, because I get so many messages from people that seem like they're really dug into their struggle. And sometimes that's their choice, and sometimes it feels probably like they're helpless and it's thrust upon them. But if to everyone, I would say, if you're finding yourself dug in with your struggle, a lot of times the best thing you can do is just give yourself permission to completely step away from that situation, the consequences even, and just let creativity and passion start to reflourish by reducing the pressure. All right? Hopefully that's valuable. Certainly has been valuable for me. I'll catch you next time.